Wow, FrameRater turns 10 years old today. While I've previously retired from the channel to work on my own stuff, I'd always looked forward to doing something for this milestone. So this'll be a deep dive into the past 10 years of the channel with some behind the scenes stuff. If you're into that kind of thing, you might like this. If you're not, you might not. But either way, I hope you enjoy. FrameRater wasn't my first YouTube channel. Most of the older ones consisted of dumb era-relevant memes. Not much of that exists anymore, but, well, not much of value was lost. FrameRater itself began in 2015 when I was taking an advertisement and marketing program. Unsure of what my future looked like, I decided in the meantime to try taking YouTube seriously for once. Maybe I could build a career out of it, or at least a portfolio. My first thought was to create a sort of classic game room clone. You know, reviewing random games from all generations. I did end up doing that, with my first video being a Doom 2 review for the Game Boy Advance. These sorts of channels are very common now, but in 2015, most were trying to emulate that JonTron style. I just wanted to make traditional reviews. Not to say I didn't play around with other formats though, including whatever this was. But eventually I stuck with the narrated voiceovers and, you know, saturated as this market is now, I don't think that would work so well today. Not to say FrameRater was a sure shot in 2015 either. It took some unusual experiments to get exposure here. But I'm getting ahead of myself. After all, I still have to figure out a name. I get asked about how I came up with the title of FrameRater a lot, so here's my response. Honestly, it's nothing remarkable. I just made it up on the spot when I got to the insert username selection. I was thinking of words relating to reviewing games and thought I could play off of that. Frame rates came to mind, and hey, what if I'm the FrameRater, huh? 10 years later, am I still happy with that name? Not really. I don't think frame or rater fit closely enough with the content I've established here. Also, I never felt that FrameRater slips off the tongue as nicely as I'd want it to. But in terms of channel name accuracy, I guess the title Lazy Game Reviews was never terribly accurate with his content either, so... Oh, phone call. So, okay, I got a name, now I need to establish the theme. You know, channel graphics, sound design, intros, etc. What I initially came up with was a red brick background and neon sign for that vintage arcade bar appeal. With the font choice of Broadway, of course, famously used in Miami Vice. Overused as heck, I know. This stayed as my theme until a fan named Mintfritter created some fan art in 2017, and that became the template for my channel's presentation forthcoming. So that was a tidbit that I like to consider my channel lore pieces, among numerous others I'll mention today. Like this one early intro beat that I used from an unknown source. This is Ribbit King, a game for the Nintendo GameCube. People asked me what this was for years, but I had no idea. I actually lost the track shortly after I made this. Eventually someone found the full track and sourced it for me, leading us to now where you can find Loving You by Stephen Rowan on Spotify, or alternatively as a high-quality FLAC on his Bandcamp page. He once offered to make more music for my channel, and that is a huge honor, but as the channel developed over the years, I feel like the atmosphere kind of also changed, so I didn't really feel like it would be appropriate anymore. All the same, great dude, check out his music. In an effort to get my name out there, I started connecting with other creators for collaborations. Unfortunately, something wasn't really working there. I'm not sure why to this very day, but these rarely boosted the analytics for anyone involved. So, as a result, I haven't done many collabs since.
Ready to go when you are.
Xbox? Oh dang, I got the PS2 version. Who else here got the PS2 version?
What?
This may be just a minor part of today's script, but I did once put a lot of time and energy into these. So too did the collaborators. We all had hopes and dreams, which eventually split us in different directions.
He shall be rebuilt.
Sometime between all this, I would switch out of the advertisement and marketing program into a journalism program. It'd been implied that I could get professional video editing opportunities through it, which was all I really had in mind by going there. Alas, this turned out to be only a small chunk of a far more involved program. Should've realized that earlier, but I don't really know what I was doing in 2016, to be honest. I did make this custom FrameRater arcade machine with my dad, though. Yeah, I don't know when else to mention this. It's a fun thing to look back on, though it hasn't been functional in years. While in the journalism program, I reignited an old animated project of mine from 2013. Yeah, long time ago now. This was called Pre-Flarb the series, which premiered as a pilot on August 30th, 2016. Think of it like a buddy cop show with a Futurama skin. Making Pre-Flarb introduced me to a variety of software, the Adobe suite mostly. That would turn out to be immensely helpful, because it gave me the skills needed to develop other sorts of content going forward. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to make the Knuckles Sings adventure in early 2017.
Oh no!
I doubt many of you today know about this, but Knuckles Sings was a series of pseudo-animated live-action videos depicting Gregzilla's Knuckles sketch invading the internet and my house. Odd as that may sound, it's what got FrameRater on the map. Thus, ultimately, if Pre-Flarb never happened, this channel would have looked very different today. Thanks to Knuckles Sings and a selection of other dumb era-relevant memes, FrameRater managed to get thousands of new subscribers. While I did enjoy making these videos to an extent, it wasn't what I wanted to do long-term. More of a goofy side hustle to increase my overall viewership. Once the hype settles, I'll go back to those game reviews. Oh yeah, then this happened.
You don't know the way.
Yes, I
Do you know the way?
I know the way.
You have to have Ebola to know the way.
And thus, Knuckles Sings continued for longer than it had any right to. I even made a Rayman spin-off called Raymang. I don't have a damn clue why I did that. Yeah, that'll do. But what happens to my channel now? Now, who are these zany characters and why did they take over my channel for a while there? The story behind that is, one day I was watching Computer Dreams, a compilation of the 80s most impressive 3D animations. And there it was, a segment called Mickey Mouth by Harold Harris. This was used as a station ID for Much Music, which is basically the MTV of Canada. I grew up watching plenty of Much Music before school, so that resonates with me a lot. Oh, I also discovered that Harold was involved with the production of a Canadian cartoon I watched growing up. Isn't that just the cherry on the cake? I started using the Mickey Mouth imagery a lot, which I ended up adopting as a sort of channel mascot. Seemed fitting, a big faceless mouth blabbering away. Ironically, I did eventually put a face to my voice, with that little sailor dude who gets beaten by a hammer. Then I made him into a PNG tuber. Was this a good idea? I don't know, but here he is anyways. I talked with the creator of this animation one time. Initially, I was kinda nervous about it all because it's not like I really asked for permission to use his characters. But as it turned out, he was happy to hear from me. He even proceeded to send me the original concept sheet for the animation. That's pretty cool, isn't it? And here's a framed picture of the Mickey Mouth model, which a viewer sent to me. They claim to have found it at a thrift store somewhere close to the college that Harold attended. 10 out of 10. Simple but elegant frame. Reviewed by yours truly, the FrameRater. I haven't used Harold's animation much in years, but it certainly left a legacy on the channel. One time a fan, Uneven Prankster, made their own modern reanimation of the crew, and that was really cool to see. That one sailor-looking dude still makes an appearance here and there. He was redesigned by TPH Official for a shorts experiment not too long ago. I don't know if this guy ever had a real name, but when making the assets for him, I called the files Sailor Boy. We call him Sailor Dude now, he grew up a bit.
This summer, don't spend all day inside playing video games. Get some fresh air once in a while.
As I had promised myself, I did return to reviews, but the new audience wasn't fully invested in that. Sure, I was doing better on the platform than ever before, so I couldn't complain, but the numbers clearly showed a priority for meme content. Unsure of how to please both crowds, without sacrificing the channel's identity, I felt the best bet was to do something unique. I had realized that retro game emulation was something I spent a lot of time with, so what if I made content about it? The thing about that is, back then, this was a hard sell for a creator. Nintendo was especially hostile about emulation, so the YouTube scene for it was rather bleak. While indeed risky, I thought it could be just the push I needed to transition out of the meme content. So I gave it a shot, and the results were satisfactory. Though still, it wasn't enough to survive on my own. Seeing as how there were already plans for me to move out of my parents' house at this point, I was in a bit of a pickle. I then decided to put the channel into retirement to focus on this new chapter of my life. Oh, yeah, my current retirement is actually my second retirement. It's YouTube, okay? We don't need to take these things too seriously. What came next were some odd jobs, boring retail stuff, a giant warehouse and a tiny shop in the mall. This was fine, I guess, but the funny thing is, I was making almost an equal amount of money doing nothing on YouTube as I was working in retail. It only made sense to take FrameRater out of retirement as this was easy money, and I didn't want to live in a bachelor's apartment forever. That retirement only lasted a few months, by the way. In retrospect, it was more of a break, but that wasn't the initial plan. I believe it was around this time when I started overhauling my channel's aesthetics. Newly introduced was the Yeah FrameRater intro using a snippet of LMFAO's Lil Hipster Girl. Why'd I pick that one? Well, one time I managed to get Red Foo to say this on a stream.
What's up my baby? Yeah, FrameRater.
And I always loved the samples in Lil Hipster Girl, so I made this.
Yeah, FrameRater.
And my viewers seem to love it. Hell, anytime I change it now, there's an outrage. That was never the case for the previous intros, so guess I'll have to keep this one around. In case you're wondering what I used for making the intro, it was generally a mix of Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, and After Effects. I often use this software in conjunction with my video editing software of choice, Magix Vegas, which is responsible for the production of pretty much every video I've made. There was one time I did an Unreal Championship review for Xbox that used, what was it now? I think Adobe Premiere, but I don't know, I just didn't really get the handle of it, and I was so much better at using Vegas, so I just stuck with that. I've tried DaVinci Resolve a bit. Don't think I ever actually made a full video using that, but it's a pretty good one. A nice alternative if you're looking for something free. So now it's 2019, and I'm continuing to work on retro emulation content. The first video I worked on after moving out was a look at the Phoenix Game Boy emulator for Palm OS, which evolved into an all-encompassing video about gaming on a PDA. In retrospect, this video was my earliest dive into a different form of content creation, where I would essentially make a list, then discuss its subjects in an orderly fashion, something that became very common on my channel forthcoming. I eventually decided that my revenue was just enough to get by as a full-time YouTuber, so I took on the challenge. Now I could spend almost every waking hour of the day making content, which led to the hugely ambitious Everything On videos, featuring the PSP, Nintendo Wii, and eventually Xbox. Years later, I would follow up this series on a much smaller scale with the Nintendo 64 and Dreamcast. I would go on to maintain the status of being a full-time YouTuber with relative stability for more than 5 years, in which case I would say it was a success. I understood that I was making niche content here, so there was very little chance that I'd reach the mainstream, but I was cool with it. For their time, those Everything On videos performed very well, which sure I am proud of, but revisiting these today, it's kind of funny that they were ever considered a useful resource. Needless to say, I don't really like these anymore, especially that PSP one. Compare these to any modern equivalent, be it mine or some other channels, it's just not very good. Either way, they keep getting views for some reason. The PSP one remains my most viewed video, though that Buck the Bunny discussion did pass it for a short time. There was once a video with over 2 million views on FrameRater, but I'd prefer to forget about that one.
Collect the circles, run in circle, collect in circle, circle game!
From emulation content, I was able to easily transition into the console library videos. You know, where I would briefly review every retail game on a retro console. So this idea actually came from a spontaneous Atari 5200 purchase. I didn't have too much money at the time, so if I ever bought expensive hardware like this, I would force myself to make a video out of it, hopefully to make back what I paid and more. Creators have reviewed systems and their entire catalog on YouTube before, but those were usually part of some completely different series. Like one example I can think of is AVGN's coverage of the Virtual Boy. As far as I know, I was the first to make a dedicated console library series. These videos were my top performers for a good while, and basically replaced my need of making those tricky emulator videos. Sure, console libraries didn't always pull in a competitive view count, but they did excel in the more important analytics, like watch time percentage per viewer. My biggest issue pertaining to console library videos is that they took a considerably long time to make when compared with other content. I myself underestimated how much work that 5200 video would be until I was too far in to scrap it. There wasn't even a plan to make more console libraries beyond that, but the performance of these videos quickly became undeniable. Well, at first anyways. With the more recent entries, it became hard to predict whether they would outperform any other generic video idea. So you've got to have an extreme amount of love and dedication for said console in order to justify an idea like this. Especially once you realize ahead of time that giving some viewers' favorite childhood game a less than expected review will shatter their opinion of you permanently. Have you ever sat down with your friends and got them to play a bunch of games you've enjoyed just to see what they'd think? Were you disappointed when they didn't like them as much as you did because they didn't invest nearly as much time to form a fair opinion? I know that's happened countless times with me and my friends growing up. TLDR, these videos can be a pain in the ass for many reasons, which is the explanation for why I don't make these as much anymore. That isn't to say I ever officially stopped, though. The next library that I had planned to cover was going to be the Ballyastrocade. I remember running into a fair bit of issues trying to emulate that thing. What about original hardware, you ask? Why not just use a real Bally Arcade? Well, it's very expensive. Either this or a used PS5, I mean, what would you pick? This console library video format would become the new basis for a majority of my content. But not all of my videos from this time were like that. Restricting myself to just one format would be exhausting. So you'd also see occasional experiments like my jukebox documentary, freaking chubby drinks, or coverage of those old battle beat-em-on sets. This is all quite the deviation from my original classic game room approach, but as time would prove, it was the right direction for me. Wow, these projectors sure are getting more serious. Thanks, Art Lee, for sending me the Gamma by Joy. We're going to be taking a look at it today. Don't interrupt me. I should probably make mention of the strong presence of serious Sam and Rayman content, which have more or less been around since the beginning of the channel. Hell, some circles only recognize me today as a serious Sam or Rayman creator. And similarly to how Prey and Flarb established milestones for the channel, a serious Sam port was responsible for that significant Palm OS video. Anyways, I've sunk more hours into the serious Sam and Rayman franchises than probably any other. Much of that has to do with their inclusion in bargain bins. Hey, I was a kid, I didn't have much to my name. And no, my family wasn't poor, but they just didn't like spending money on games. Guess there were bigger priorities there. You know how that goes. Like many out there, I learned that price tags and sale figures don't always reflect the true value of something. There's a lot of great stuff not getting pushed, and a lot of crap that is being pushed. Now I'd like to take a moment to talk about video thumbnails. I used to have a strict policy for these. Each video had a background color unique to its category, which viewers would notice if they clicked on any of my playlists. I really tried to enforce the idea of looking at those for a while there. I still keep all my playlists and the video descriptions to this day. Alas, after using that color scheme for years seemingly without anyone noticing, I decided to scrap it and resort to a more universal style, which I again moved on from to make unique thumbnails for every video. Then I got tired of that, revised the previous style, and, you can see the decline in consistency over the years, but I don't care anymore, it is what it is. Though I do like to look back on this as a sort of era-defining quality for the channel. Usually a change in thumbnail style coincided with a different intro and outro graphic. It also, in most cases, reflected a personal achievement like graduating college or moving out. As I'm almost 30 and that fast-paced life is probably behind me now, the theme changes have mostly stagnated. I mean, what's considered a milestone now beyond, getting a dog? I would like to someday. Speaking of milestones, not all of them were positive. Who remembers 2020? I was 23 years old then, going on 24, hanging out with friends maybe once a month, but otherwise sticking to my editing chair like glue. I didn't anticipate how isolating of an experience that would become years in, especially with a global pandemic on the rise. It was maybe a year into all that when it started to feel like torture. Being stuck in a bachelor's apartment with next to zero human interaction, that led to a lot of social anxiety, the extent of which I've never really experienced before. It didn't matter whether you were for or against the COVID stuff, most people weren't leaving their houses. And yeah, being alone for months on end in a lonely bachelor's apartment was a dehumanizing experience. Look, YouTube's cool and all, but when it literally is your entire life, that's just depressing. Aw, poor YouTuber forced to make gaming videos for a living. Look, I know how that sounds. All I can say is, it gets exhausting after some years. Much of that time, I'd have rather spent doing manual labor. As a change started to feel like a need rather than a want, I pursued change. And quite a change that was. Also a job. What's that? Manual labor? Don't mind if I do.
Alright.
Seriously, life has become so much more fulfilling after I gave up full-time content creation. You might think all these personal changes would evolve the channel in some form, but not really. The biggest change would be a decline in available time for working on YouTube. Whereas previously I could spend a whole day and night tinkering with trivial matters such as channel graphics and presentation, that's not the kind of life you can expect after settling down. For a while, I wasn't sure how to manage it all. What I ultimately went with was to focus on revenue more than ever. Few experiments, few passion projects. I couldn't really afford to do otherwise anyways. The problem with that is, when something becomes less of a passion and more of a monetary focus, that warm, cozy feeling you once had dissipates until there's almost nothing left. Up until my recent retirement, I had been trying everything to reignite the spark, but needed to accept that things were just different now. The biggest contributor to this was the quickly changing landscape of YouTube. Its algorithm started moving in a direction where you more or less had to clickbait people to get views. That or use manipulative titles. I could have done that to keep the earnings up, but as for me personally, it would just feel like a sellout, and I'm not for that. It seems that by the end, I was able to establish a core audience on FrameRater that truly understands the dynamic of the channel. Many of those viewers have stuck around post-retirement, occasionally hitting me up about my content, and I can't express how grateful I am to have created that sort of impact on people. While many of my desired outcomes from YouTube have come true, this specifically was what I was hoping to achieve on a personal level from the very beginning. That said, I've now gotten to a point where the dynamic within myself has changed. It's hard to sustain a YouTube channel focused on video games when you hardly play video games anymore. Unfortunately, I can't say this is new for me either. Sometime around the mid-2010s, I started noticing that the fun factor of gaming was quickly slipping away from me. Another one of the incentives for making YouTube reviews in the first place was to get that feeling back, which did actually work for a few years, though by the middle of the pandemic, starting a new game felt like being forced to socialize at a gathering where you don't belong. Not to mislead you all, of course I still love playing certain favorites of mine, and I've enjoyed creating the majority of my content. I have no less interest in retro technology than I did before, which I have covered quite a bit on this channel. In theory, I could have swapped to being a retro tech content creator, but seeing as how my interest in gaming kept declining, I didn't want that to happen again. Slowly killing off all my interests for the sake of content is a terrifying thought that must be avoided at all costs. So sometime in 2022, I decided to try restructuring my life, with far less of a focus on gaming. This began with selling off what I wasn't using, and downsizing whatever I possibly could. Sure, I have a GameCube, but my Xbox Series S emulates those games flawlessly on an HD TV. I used to be die-hard into using original hardware myself, but in recent years I've started prioritizing what's convenient for me, like maximizing the free space in my environment. Having been an avid console collector before, I can't say I miss that abominable mess of cords, or the occasion when my perfect setup isn't working perfectly for some reason. Whoa. I've since sold most of my systems, with just the standouts and personal favorites left in my collection. I could never pass up on my dad's old Atari, or the Magnavox Odyssey. Currently, I still have most of my handhelds. I mean, they hardly take up any space. Otherwise, I occasionally use my modded Xbox 360 and, of course, the Series S. You can do an awful lot with these in your collection. But that being said, I don't even use these that much anymore. I've just got other priorities now. Wife be like, I went on vacation to get away from the Husband be like, alright, let's switch up for a moment. I'd like to discuss something related to my retirement post, as I found that many took it way out of context. I thanked God for my presence on YouTube, and then some neckbeards went around preaching how I'd found God and quit. No, I didn't find God, I never lost him. There's just never been a reason for me to talk about this online, it's unrelated to what I do here. Whatever the case, I'd be hard-pressed to find a reason not to thank God when going into retirement. And in case the earlier segments of this video weren't clear enough, religion had nothing to do with that decision. Now here's a question I get asked a lot. Where the frick are your older videos? Well, honestly, I feel that a lot of my older content hasn't aged well. Especially that earlier retro emulation stuff that I already talked about. Beyond those, some videos had inaccuracies that I just couldn't fix with a simple trim. The typical response to this is why not just put a disclaimer in the description box, or maybe use a pinned comment? Well, beyond the fact that most people don't actually read those, every FrameRater video is going to be someone's first. And I don't want some outdated opinion from 2017 to influence someone who never checks the date. That's a lot more people than you think it is. What's hilarious to me all these years later in 2025 is that we had a solution to this that actually worked at one point. They were called annotations. Yeah, they would get abused a lot, but they were also extremely useful. It notified everyone who was watching something that you wanted to say after the fact. Can we just have those back? I will say that a few of my deleted or private videos still have value. In those cases, I often re-edit them to minimize the fluff and post it on FrameRater archives. There are still a handful of videos I'd like to repost there, so subscribe if you're interested in that. One significant removal from the channel, in my opinion, is the 2016 Prey and Flarb content. I've since rewatched it all, and I do see the potential of it as a series. Albeit, the way it was presented back then was kinda trashy and not something I'd like to return to. An over-reliance on unfunny humor destroyed any chance it really had. I haven't done much with these guys since, though more so, again, by the means of shifting priorities. Animating is hard, very time-consuming, and, honestly, I've had difficulties nailing the presentation of my animations as a whole. While I do intend to bring Prey and Flarb back eventually, to some capacity, I'll need to be strategic in how it's designed. It would be pretty cool to bring them back on the 10th anniversary of the original pilot episode, August 30th, 2016. Funnily enough, I just realized that was my 20th birthday. There must have been an intention there, I just completely forgot about it. Please don't hold me to this date. I do not have any idea whether I'll make something for August 30th, 2026. I'm not even gonna make a note of it. I'm not gonna bother stressing myself out about this stuff anymore, but it would be kinda cool, wouldn't it?
Chex Mix, #1 food snack in the land. It's a cereal taste that you eat with your hands. Chex Mix at your local grocer, buy your box. Your family will all say, Chex Mix rocks!
Something else that I've neglected for a while are the other FrameRater channels. No, I'm not talking about the Archives one, I'm talking about FrameFlux and FramePlay. Recently I saw these being referred to as my secret channels, but there's nothing secret about them really, I just have no reason to promote them. They only exist to prevent cluttering up my main channel, really. Imagine everyone who turned on notifications has to be alerted by tractor sex. Not really encouraging you to subscribe, they're more so dumping grounds for random stuff I've decided to archive.
Holy shit. Holy fuck. Kermit's twerking in my place. Oh god. Oh fuck. Oh shit. Oh.
Okay, let's wrap things up. As of recently, I'm still trying to deconstruct my YouTuber brain. Even while I'm not actively making content right now, I still find myself distraught at the thought of investing countless hours into a project that doesn't perform well, or forcing myself to play a game that I don't care about for the sake of a checklist. But without all that, I now find myself clueless at how to enjoy the free time that I do have. I have since picked up a few hobbies though. Haven't gotten into full novels yet, but I've enjoyed some brief reading here and there. I've also enjoyed making custom CDR burns, then printing out appropriate labels to build my ultimate physical collection of music. It's a quick and easy way to create dedicated playlists that'll be around for years to come, whether you've forgotten about them or not. I think I've got the hang of this now too, they're fairly convincing, and use only the highest quality rips that I can find. If you'd like to see a video about this process, I'd love to further discuss it at some point. Anyone can do it really, it just takes a little patience and, well, printer ink. But hold on, did I just come up with a potential new video idea? Does that mean I'm gonna make a return to YouTube? Well, I mean, what's really stopping me from making a video every now and then, right? Covering something I'm uniquely passionate about? Just a heads up in advance, something which I'm sure won't be surprising to hear now. There might be less gaming-related content going forward. It'll always have a presence here, I'm sure, but I won't bother to make it a priority anymore. FrameRater will finally be about my own interests above everything else. Now, this also isn't to say that I'll never retire again. I know I should refer to these periods as breaks, But that isn't as relieving as it is to say I'm done without the pressure of feeling like I have to return at some point. I hope that makes sense.
Need for seed.
So, how about any of my previously unfinished projects? Will those be making a comeback? Well, I wasn't really in the middle of anything when I stopped, but I did have some ideas floating around, some of which I unfortunately can't make anymore, like the once suggested Wii homebrew video. I don't have a Wii anymore. Still, there are numerous project ideas that I can see myself covering someday. Of this list on screen, I'm capable of and still interested in the following projects. I might also cover Raises Hell again someday. It's been one of my favorites for as long as I can remember. Gave it a playthrough for its 20th anniversary in April, and man, it holds up really well for a budget title from 2005. I just wish it was on more platforms. To this day, it's locked on the original Xbox. Anyways, for now, I'm just gonna do whatever the heck I want without worrying about algorithms or monetary consequences. After all, many of you have said in the past, just make anything and I'll watch, so let's see if you were lying. But that's where I'll end it for this one. If you're not subscribed already, I don't know how you got this far in the video if you're not, you might as well do so to see where this channel takes me in another 10 years from now. Frankly, I have no clue myself, and I wouldn't rather have it any other way at this point. Well, thanks for watching as always, and I'll see you whenever I have something worth sharing, I guess. Take care, everyone!